Ask the Agronomist video series. I am here, Phil Long, with our intern on a special edition today, Kirsten Suntken. So she's with us. She's actually finishing up her internship, so unfortunately I haven't got her in too many videos, but she's going to be a star today at least. But today we're going to be talking about something that's very timely. It's kind of that time of the year to go through. I'm holding some ears in my hand here, but yield estimates. We've had a lot of calls here recently, corn and beans obviously, but today we're going to focus a little more on corn when it comes to the yield estimate side of things, because honestly a lot of people enjoy looking at corn, and soybeans are a little tougher to do a yield estimate on. So we'll do that in a future episode, but today we're going to focus on corn. And we're going to do a few math problems, something I haven't done in a while, but we're going to have a little bit of fun with it and try to get some of the information across in a fun way to show you that there's still a lot left in the season right now. Yeah, we're sitting here in early August. This is a great time to look at ears of corn, but you got to realize we still have a lot of time to go here before the corn is mature. So just to kind of recap the season, what's been going on. 2021 has kind of been about like 2020, a lot of different things happening. We started off slow. There was cool temperatures, kind of made the corn struggle coming out of the ground, especially a lot of it was planted early. So we had just a slower start. The GDUs weren't accumulating very quickly. We had frost, unfortunately, later than we would have liked to seen around Memorial Day. That pulled a lot of things back, and I've seen that in some fields. You can tell that they were struggling around that time period when they were set back. All these things come into play. The other thing that we've seen a lot lately is seems like a horror movie for corn rootworms. Corn rootworms have been really bad, really all throughout Latham country, but it just seems like they're in peak flight right now, just really showing up in all fields this year. So it's just been a lot of different issues hitting us this year. And we're going to see some of those things coming as we walk through this demonstration. So the first thing we're going to go to is ears per acre. So I always talk about the contributing factors to corn yield, and the first one, obviously, and it's a little windy out here, is ears per acre. This is the most important part. I put in blue down there at the bottom, and we'll kind of put these up on the screen too, so they're a little more visible. But the most important part on this is the far left, and that's how many harvestable ears are out there. And I know Kirsten helped a lot with this year. She did a lot of stand counts. She also did some emergence notes as well, and I know the ones she was looking at, they were, about a week or so? It seemed like it took a week or so to emerge.
Yes, it would take about a week. I actually did a trial with it, and I would take, I put in a little stick for each emergence and see each day, and it took about a week. Like Phil said, it took about a week for each one of the plants to emerge. Yeah,
and she did a nice job putting each day on there. That's something we're going to show off at the field day as well. Unfortunately, she'll be back in school at that point, but we'll be able to see some of that good information. Something you should always keep track of, and this year was just delayed emergence was hard on things, and that greatly affects the uniformity of the ear as you count these ears. But looking at the population, we talk a lot about stand counts early on. This is stand counts right now. So this is how many ears are out there in the field, and I have to stress this because we want to say, oh, well, I planted 36,000. There's got to be 36,000 out there in the field. That's probably likely not the case. So making sure you're taking a stand count when you're out looking at yield, out looking at ears is extremely important. So if we take all the other factors out, that's what I'm doing on each one of these charts. You can see I'm using a standard 80,000 kernels per bushel here. But if you just factor and just look at the stand count, if we had 32 to 36,000 plants out there, these different rates, you can see as I factored it across here at 14 around and 40 long in terms of girth and length on the ear. You can see we have 224 bushels on the 32,000 side, up to 252 bushels an acre at 36,000. So those are harvestable ears, and there's a difference of a little over 10% between all of those. So 10% seems like a big difference, but there's a lot of things that can rob 10% of our yield. So let's move on to the next one. And the next one is kernels per ear. So we get a little deeper here. This is the one that we always get excited about talking about, it seems like. We go out, we count the number around, the number long, and hopefully you're taking a good sample size, or else you're not going to be, it's tough to be accurate on a huge scale size of a field. You know, if you're looking at 120 acres, you need to take more than one count. Obviously, our Data Forward app can kind of guide you with the satellite imagery to some of those better and maybe mediocre areas, which would be helpful, but you got to make sure you're taking enough counts out there. So if we're looking at kernels per area, you can see on the top here, we're looking just at the impact of girth. So I changed the girth from 14 around to 18 around, top to bottom. So that went from 238 bushel to 306 bushel. Seems like a lot, and that's the comment we typically get is, are kernels around more important than kernels long? Well, let's go down and look at the bottom here. So we've got length on here as well. Keeping things consistent, I'm just using 14 around here at the bottom and then changing the length. So 30 to 40, obviously things could sway a lot more than that, especially in a year like this. We might see some 20, 25 long or some 45 long. It just depends how the year develops in the genetics. But if we keep everything consistent and looking at these, the influence of kernels long, we can go anywhere from 179 bushel an acre at 30 long to 238 bushel at 40 long. So a difference you can see here, it actually adds up to 25, 26%, 27 here if you add these two together, but you're in that 25, 27% difference. This is very similar. So and this is where it gets tricky, because obviously if you've got 12 around and versus an 18 around or something, it seems very dramatic, and it's going to take a difference of a yield hit, and I'll show you that here on the next slide. But this gives you an indication that, okay, there's still 10 to 15%, even just dropping 2 around, you can see that yield hit. But the length of the year also plays a big role in your final yield. So before we say which one is which, let's look at the last one that we got here. And that's our weight per kernel. So this part here is it's kind of the last piece. We're not quite yet to that point. I grabbed some ears this morning. I grabbed actually a 102 day and a 108 day, and the 108 is early milk stage, and the 102 day is well into the milk stage. So we're starting to see some of the kernel abortion at the tip and so forth that's going on, especially in the 102 day there. So you're seeing more development going on. So as we get later and later in the season, you're going to be able to see which ones are actually developing. If you're counting too early, as I've had some calls right after the blister stage, after it's pollinated, you may be counting too many, especially with some of the stress that we're seeing right now. So as it gets a little further along, R3, R4, you'll easily be able to tell how many kernels are hopefully developing and becoming part of that yield at the end of the season. So just to look at this, so this is essentially our test weight equation, part of the factor and the yield. So I just threw 2 of them out here. So I'm just going to call a stressed crop. I'm going to give that the credit of 90,000. So if the crop is stressed, it's going to take more. It's going to be lighter weight kernels. It's going to take more kernels to fill that bushel. If it's a healthy crop and the kernel depth is really good and filled out really well, when it dries down, it may only take 80,000 kernels to fill that bushel. So once again, keeping everything consistent, 16 around by 35 long and 34,000 per acre. We come out and you can see the difference here. So it's a difference of 212 bushel to 238 bushel. That's another 10-12% difference in terms of yield. So the key here is that all these things add up. So as we go through the season right now, these years look pretty decent, but they've still got to put the test weight on. There's still kernels that can abort, which goes back to our previous slide. How many kernels long is it really going to be? And then this last part, R4 on, which is easily 30% of the yield equation. You know, when we're sitting at R3, R4, we've got 30 to 40% of dry matter to still accumulate in the ear and in that plant. I mean, it's still taking up nutrients and transferring it to that ear. So really important to remember that there's just a lot that goes into this equation and a lot that can still change. So I wanted to throw a little fun one in here at the very end just to kind of wrap it up, and that's looking back at this, adding them all together, I'll say. So we've got 14 around by 40 long. So I've had a lot of questions about this. If maybe my neighbor has more kernels around, is he for sure going to yield more than mine? So this is showing you what that is. So 14 by 40 long, that's pretty easily, that's probably about what this one ear is. So 14 kernels round, 40 long, gives you 560 kernels per ear, and then keep it consistent at 34,000. And then I'm going to show you this ear in a second, but let's move down to this other ear. So your neighbor's got an ear that's 18 around, 35 long, probably not quite as long. So we back it off a little bit. That's easily realistic. I've counted many of those ears. That's 630 kernels per ear. So if we multiply this out, it's actually about a 30 bushel difference. 25 to 30 bushel difference. But then if we factor in which one's healthy and which one's not, so the test weight factor that we just talked about, and I did have a marker here, I was going to write it in at the last second. You can multiply it out as well and check my math, but this comes out to 238 bushel, and this one also comes out to 238 bushel. So that goes to show you that test weight can be a big factor in the final yield. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. There's a lot left in the season. That final R4 to R6 push, once we get done with the final maturation of the crop and things dry down, makes a big difference. Right now we're dealing with a lot of heat stress, which is really going to play a big factor in which of those kernels actually finish and develop into kernels. So just a lot going on. I know it seems like a lot of math equations there, but I thought it'd be fun to just kind of talk through it a little bit and give you a kind of a rundown of what it looks like when you're out in the field. So make sure you take lots of counts and get a good estimate when you're standing out in the field. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to give us a call.